Hello and welcome. My name is Lorrayne Ham. I am the speaker on the Virginia Assembly Unincorporated. We are the lawful jurisdiction land soil governance on Virginia within the boundaries of the state, the nation state. I want to introduce you to Bradley Odell, our coordinator and our oversight chair committee. Randell Alan Rimbey, our Marshal at Arms. He will be sharing on self-governance today, the foundation of what holds our governance structure in place. Welcome, gentlemen, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Lorrayne. What an exciting day for the Virginia Assembly this is. Our first podcast. Randy, good to have you here too.
Thank you.
First question I got for you to start the call off. Are there two forms of self-governance?
In my mind's eye, yes, I believe there are two forms. One can be considered a singular form where I refer to it as me, myself, and I. And the other one is plural, where it is you, us, and we. I believe there's a plurality in self-governance as well as there's a singularity. I think most of us are familiar with the self-governance within ourselves. Within ourselves, where we are our own micro-government. Self-governance or self-sovereignty or self-rule, whatever you want to call it, is the ability of a person to exercise necessary functions of regulation without the intervention of an external force, such as unreasonable laws. An example of that is the speed limit. The de facto corporation government doesn't believe that we can self-govern ourselves on our highways and byways, and so they have to limit our ability to travel on the roads. That's an example of being able to self-govern and travel safely as to not jeopardize someone else's health. It also refers to our own personal conduct within our churches, within our family, our work environments, within legal boundaries. We have a responsibility to take care of ourselves and to make sure we don't step on someone else's freedom. This is where self-control and self-discipline comes in. Remember, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, is basically the foundation of common law. You've got to be able to control your own impulses and your desires. You've got to be able to, not step on someone else's freedom. Remember, your freedom ends when someone else begins. It's a journey. Being able to self-govern, coming in from the matrix that we are all used to, the Republican and the Democrat, politics, is all a way to kind of put us in our place, give us bumper pads, so to speak, as till we don't get off the beaten path. But in common law, we're expected to do that ourselves without any interference from outside. So you got to remember, you have to take care of yourself first. And I think, when I came in to be an ASN 3.5 years ago, I kind of knew that, I guess, but I never really made the connection later on until I took over. I volunteered to be a Marshal at Arms here on Virginia. And I began to realize that I think there's more to self-governance than just taking care of your own house, so to speak, which brings me to segue to the plural part of this, right? So the plural part of this is the we. It's the you, it's the us, it's all of us together. If it's one thing to be able to govern ourselves and do all the right things, but we're currently living in an environment, if you want to call it the de facto government, where they're telling us what to do. And it's kind of like putting a square peg into a round hole. It doesn't work. So we're going to have to restore the Republican governance that was in place back when we won the Battle of Independence and July 4th and all that stuff. We're going to have to bring all that back to restore the governance that helps to protect the freedoms from us. And I'd like to quote, if I may, I might be reading a little bit from the Mayflower Compact and the Declaration of Independence to prove my point that self-governance isn't just me, myself, and I. It's you, us, and we. And here we go. Let me just paraphrase from these two foundational documents. We want to combine ourselves together into a civil body politic for our better ordering and preservation and furtherance of the ends aforesaid, and by virtue hereof to enact, constitute, and frame such just and equal laws, ordinance, acts, and constitutions, and offices from time to time as shall be thought most to meet and convenient for the general good of the colony. So what they're saying here is it's okay to be self-governance. It's okay to take care of your own house and be good within the common law. But it's another thing to create the environment to protect those rights and freedoms that we all have. And that was something the Mayflower Compact put out. And then I think another paraphrasing from hopefully an excerpt you're all familiar with is the Declaration of Independence, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, not man, men. And of course, we can include women these days as well. But we derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. That's all of us together, not one of us together. It's all of us together. And whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people, all of us, to alter or abolish it and to institute the new government. So we have to get involved with our government. We have to lay its foundation on such principles and organizing powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So what they're saying is we've got to create the governance which protects our rights and freedoms. It's the voice of the people. But you can't voice your people when you're taking care of your own business and you don't get involved in your neighborhood, your locality, county, state, or gosh forbid, down in the future in our Continental Congress. So I hope everybody understands that there's a plurality to self-governance. You've got to get involved. If you don't get involved with the restoration of Virginia's Republican governance, we have very little chance of protecting the rights and freedoms or gaining them back, I guess is what I should say, is gaining back those rights and freedoms which were granted to us in 1776. And so that's in my mind's eye what the difference is between the singular and the plural self-governance.
Thanks, Rand.
You're welcome.
Thanks. I mean, you nailed it. I think, that just gets word out to the rest of the assembly. We need people involved. We've got to get involved, and we all have to do it together. It's That's not right. Just, everybody's got a voice in the self-governance. So more people get involved will be the better. And you nailed it there. So I appreciate that.
That's an understatement, my friend. Let's go.
Yes, sir. What is the difference between self-governance and governmental control?
Well, there's a big one. We're all living now in what we consider a de facto world, governmental control. We're led to believe through the corporations that we have freedom, and yet we don't really have freedom. We have privilege, and the privilege has been granted to us through the papal municipal law or canon law and maritime admiralty law, which is based on Roman civil law. And both of those types of governance, ruling governances are based on legislatively based without government consent. In other words, our statutes, codes, mandates, ordinances, whatever you want to call them, are legislated by the government in control, and then we are meant to comply and obey. And if you comply and obey to those laws, you get privileges. The privilege is to drive on our roads if you have a license. The privilege to drive freely if you obey the speed limit. In other words, there's a lot of different reasons why the de facto feels like they need to control us. They can control us because we, in fact, are debt slaves, and by controlling us, they can squeeze more money out of us. All right. Conversely, let's go to American common law. American common law elects its fiduciaries from the population at large. We don't utilize an RNC, a DNC, where they get to pick the candidates that you can choose from. In American common law, we elect the fiduciaries that we want in office. And those fiduciaries give the oath of office to be able to serve our voices. They don't create the laws. We create the laws and tell them to enact and sign that law, sign that bill into law. The voice comes from the people. And so by our voices being heard, we're able to share our self-governance responsibilities, the things that we learn on our own, given to the government to create the foundation, the governmental foundation in which we can protect those rights and freedoms, and we can all live freely without any interference from anyone else from the external. And to me, that's what the difference is between a government control and self-governance.
And yeah, and the way the municipal Congress right now, I mean, they're supposed to be there for us, and they're not. I mean, we've seen across the news.
I think what they do is they go with trends from what they've heard from the people, but those trends aren't the voices of the people. They're just going with what the body politic is saying in general and make laws. The problem is they make those laws and then they reverse them and put a caveat in those laws of something we need to do to comply and obey to get that privilege. That's how that de facto government is working.
And then they don't follow it.
Right.
Right. I mean, craziest thing I've ever heard. So,
that's right. Yep.
Crazy. What are the personality traits to be aware of to make the change to self-governance?
First of all, I think you need to be open-minded. All the way up until about 3.5 years ago, I was very biased into the Republican, Democrat, the corporate form of governance that we've had. It was like, yeah, okay, right. Trump is good, blah, blah, blah. This is my guy. This is not my guy. I felt like I was biased into that form of government because it's the only thing I was ever told. Mm-hmm. But I think you have to open your minds to be able to look for something different. As an old employer once told me a long time ago, he said, nothing changes if nothing changes, right? So if we just continue on in the same path, you can complain and whine all you want, but nothing is going to change until you get involved. So, I would recommend research, making a list of opportunities that you might see if you really truly had real God-given freedoms, as opposed to following statutes, codes, and mandates to be able to get your privileges, right? That's the biggest thing. So the first thing you got to do is at least change your status to an American state national, get involved with your assembly, and begin learning what those freedoms actually are. And I think to be involved with this, you got to leave your personal ego behind. I was guilty of everything I'm explaining now is something I was guilty of, but they always say hindsight's 20/20. So right. You've got to venture out. Remember, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Venture out into another world and see what else is out there. And you might find what you find is pleasing to the eye, and you can actually see that there is a plan in place to recoup and restore the governance that gives us our true freedoms. So leave your ego behind, get involved with service in your communities, counties, states, and federal government. Along with that same thing, try to forget the bad memories. But I don't know, I think bad memories can actually be a motivating factor because you don't want those things to happen again. Sometimes you don't want history to repeat. There's parts of history we would prefer to ignore and just forget about. On the other hand, if you forget about them, you don't learn from them. And that's why I think a lot of the indoctrination camps, some of our schools, our corporate entities took away some of the actual real education involved with how we actually should see the history of our government moving forward. And because we didn't have those bad memories or those bad experiences, we just let them go and just assumed, okay, well, this is what we need to do. So try to forget the bad memories, but use that energy to be able to move forward and create the new restored governance.
Yep.
Compare your pros and cons. What are the pros and cons of staying where you're at? What are the pros and cons of staying a U.S. citizen? What are the pros and cons of changing your political status, getting involved with your assembly, and making change? List your pros and cons. It's not an easy change. I remember when I first did my 1779s and got involved in the first couple assembly meetings, I got overwhelmed, and I actually ended up taking a couple months off because I had to go back in my mind and go, okay, what have I done? What's good about this? What's bad about this? And I came to the conclusion that if I went back to where I was, nothing was ever going to be good. The only chance I had was to move forward. And it was taking that month or two of breath that eventually said, Randy, you've only got pros going forward. You have the ability to change things, and that's what's really important.
Yeah.
You want to redefine what freedom really is. And I said this earlier. Are you privileged or free? We've learned that freedom is privilege. In my generation, maybe in my father's generation, there's been a slow metamorphosis of taking our freedoms and creating them as privileges. And so what we're doing is, by following all these statutes, codes, and mandates, and we're getting the ability to earn our privileges. That's not freedom. Freedom is the ability to do what you want to do when you want to do it. The only caveat is you can't do harm to another person. You can't criminalize anyone, and that's physical, financial, emotional, or any other way. You can't do crime on people. That's pretty much it. Otherwise, you live freely and do what you want to do and take care of your own business.
Yes, sir.
And all of this, the final one is it takes willpower. It's not easy. Courage, bravery, curiosity, all are forces to help you use that willpower to break free from the current corporate government that we're currently living under.
Yep.
And so I think those are the biggies that I can help you with, and help you make the decision to change that status and get involved with your state assembly. Yep.
I could say when before I became an ASN, I was like, I don't understand this. I'd heard from people for about a year about it, and I was like, nah, this can't be true. But digging in, doing your research, the many emotions you go through as you're going through that process of being frustrated, being angry, being, why were we not told all this information, right? Why was this kept from us? It's just amazing. And then to be on the back side of it now to say, okay, yep, I made the right decision. The pros were there. Been through all those emotions. It's just crazy that all this was hidden from all of us.
Right.
Of how it should be.
And
what a shame that is.
Yeah, and I'm sure you'll agree. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Right.
There's only moving forward from that point on. Once you realize that the history you've been told and we've been living under is a lie, you can't go back.
No. Why? And why would you want to?
Right.
To that mess.
Exactly.
That's why, in talking with people, I don't understand why they don't, they're not doing enough research, obviously, but why they don't want to jump on board as well. There's no negative there. There's positive all the way forward.
The brainwashing, the mind wiping has been extremely effective for some, unfortunately.
It has.
And
change is hard, even when you're trying to go against change that is things that are bad. Change is hard.
That's right.
All right, Randy, we got one more to finish up here.
Okay.
What is the bottom line for Virginia and other states in regards to self-governance?
Well, hopefully if you put some of the information I gave you together, you'll realize that just changing your status and self-governing yourself is not ample enough ammunition, if I can use that word, to be able to change the corporate government that we're currently living under. It's not enough. In fact, because of the color of law and judges adjudicating from the bench and being able to interpret the statutes, codes, and mandates the way they want, they entrap American state nationals and they can change their decisions anytime they want. The only way forward that I see is to be able to create a strong enough land and soil assembly governance to be able to put our corporate employees in their place, and they either take word from us or they disappear, or gosh forbid we actually have to go arrest people. Sorry, my earphone's falling out. And put them and charge them with treason. If you don't get involved with your state assembly, your chances of survival in the de facto world. Remember, back in 1776, there really was no de facto world. You didn't need to fight against anybody else. You can just people just created their own laws, which is how the Declaration of Independence and the first Constitution was written. They've made their own laws without any interference from a de facto corporation. These days, we're fighting an uphill battle. So you can't be content with changing your status. You've got to get involved in some manner or capacity in your land and soil state assembly. And ultimately, I think that's the key to Virginia and any other state building their governance to be able to, unfortunately, I have to say this, to battle the de facto at first and get them to realize that they are only governmental employees for us, and then be able to start enacting the voice of the people to be heard, to be telling them what to do, and only then will we gain our freedom back. And that's in a nutshell, in my mind's eye, what I think this whole thing is all about.
Yeah, you nailed it, Randy. You nailed it there. You know, people need you to get involved. That's the biggest thing, 100%.
Yep. And so that's it. Unless you guys got questions, that's a wrap for me.
I appreciate that, Randy. That was spectacular. I want to let everyone know that's listening that we are the foundational government. We are the government, the lawful government on the land and soil of all jurisdictions on Virginia within our lawful borders. And if you want to know more, you can find the link to our website down below in the description, and you can find out more. I'll have another one about our Federation of States. So get involved. Start asking questions. As Randy said, be curious. If you don't stand for your life and the life of your family and your children and your community, we've lost. It's time to stand up and really make a stand, to live the freedom that you deserve. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Have a good one.
Good night, y'all.